Hi everybody, welcome to another video in our fermented cod liver oil series. Today we have the pleasure of the company of a good friend of mine who has been my friend, I'm proud to say, since 2008, Archie Welch. And Archie has been a committed Weston Price Foundation member, and I'd say a leader. You really have shown a lot of leadership in the organization. Since what year did you join, Archie?
I joined in 2002.
That's a long time ago. That
Yeah,
was because the foundation was started, what, 99?
99, right? Yeah,
And
I went to a little festival in the Detroit area. It was put on by the Detroit chapter. It was headed up by Lisa Caprero, who, by the way, did phenomenal work. She should have gotten a lot more recognition for what she did. But yeah, I just popped my head into one of the talks, and it was about the Weston A. Price talk, and the light bulbs all went off, and I was hooked.
yeah,
I
me
thought
too.
this makes a lot of sense.
It does, doesn't it? It
Yes,
does.
exactly.
So when I met you, it was 2008. Somehow you got in touch with me, and I think maybe Kelly, the Kitchen Cop blog, and we wanted to help promote you because, or somebody got in touch with us, I don't remember, that you were doing a festival, and that ended up being the first conference that I ever went to, because I found Weston Price in 2007, but your wife, Dee, had just passed away 6 months before, in childbirth, giving birth to your child, Jack. And
Well, actually, she died 7.5 months pregnant, so she died before her due date
okay,
because of the pulmonary embolism.
so it was a pulmonary embolism, and she passed away. And so I got this email, and I said, okay, of course I'll put it on my blog and promote the festival. And I don't know why I don't know, I think I just really wanted to go. And I'd never been, I'd just joined the year before, and I'd never been to a conference before. And so I ended up going, and I met all these people there, including you and Jack, and I think Dan Corrigan must have been there, right? Your partner in Corganic.
Dan, yes, Dan and Karen both helped put the whole conference together, the festival, along with about 4 or 5 other people that just did amazing work. Yeah, it was something I wanted to do to sort of celebrate Dee's life and what she had done. And I mean, she did an awful lot just in the short time she was here in Michigan.
Yeah,
Um, but just sort of highlight her life and what she'd done in the food movement. And it came off really well.
it did. It was great.
Yeah,
It was a great event.
I was completely wiped out during the day, but it was just a lot of preparation going into it. But it was great to have Natasha there. She came and spoke, and
It's Natasha Campbell McBride.
yeah, she didn't want a penny. She said, I'll show up and do it, and just eternally grateful for her contributions. Sally came, which again, eternally grateful for her contributions. Jerry Bernetti was there. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Um, but
Hold
yeah,
on.
it was a
Hold on,
wonderful
Archie.
day,
Hold on.
and
Yes.
Where's Daddy's computer?
I don't know. Go ask Jennifer, please.
yeah, I'll be expecting my little one to come in here pretty soon,
Sorry.
look for food or something.
Well, when we met, Jack was a baby and Kate was a baby. I brought Kate with me. Remember?
Now she's 8 now.
She's 8.
She's 8. Yeah, Jack will be 8 in January.
It's amazing. Like, we had little babies, and we've known each other all these years. So, Dee, I'll put a link. I'll put a video of Dee, because you did that great video after she died.
Yeah, I forgot all about that video actually,
It
and
was really sweet. I cry every time I watch that.
yeah, maybe I should watch it then.
I know. She was so beautiful. She was
Yeah.
just so beautiful. I didn't get to meet her, but um, she was a chapter leader in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah,
And
Well, Jack never got to meet her either,
then, yeah.
which is probably the saddest part of that whole thing. And yeah, she was a chapter leader in Sydney, Australia with Vicky Poulter. We met at the 2005 Weston A Price National Conference, and on the last night they had this impromptu potluck. Everybody that had their leftover foods that they bought, their kefirs and cheeses and everything else, and everybody just brought it on the back porch. And I kept hearing these people with this Australian accent in the background, and I thought, gee, I gotta go over and talk to those people. To come all the way from Australia to
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., that's quite a trip. So I went over there, and that's when I bumped into Dee, and we started talking, and we just had a lot in common. So we just talked, and then when that was finished, we went over to the bar and had a beer and closed that down. And but we just stayed in contact with each other after she went back home. And next thing you know, I'm going to Sydney, Australia to see her, and she's coming to Michigan to see me. And things just went very quickly, and we decided to get married, and ended up getting married in New Zealand, where she was born and raised. And then we moved to Michigan. So she was going to start working on her nutrition degree, so that we could. That was one of the things that we talked about on that first night. Was we both wanted to sort of get into the nutrition field, and we thought we could make a great impact in people's health by offering our services. And so that's really what our plan was when she came here. Is I would just continue on with the business I was doing, and then she would get her degree, and we'd start working in that direction. But things didn't work quite the way we wanted them to, and very sad. Those first couple of years are still somewhat of a blur. I don't know how to describe losing your partner and raising a baby at the same time. It's just, it's very difficult. He's happy, and you want to be happy for him, and then you really have to suppress a lot of your grieving, and it just comes out in really strange ways and strange times. But after a while, the grieving, the hard grieving ends, and you just want to celebrate her life. And I still have it in the back of my mind. I want to take him to New Zealand for a couple of years, and for Dee's parents, this is their only grandchild, and it'd be really, really nice if they could be around for a few years. And for me, just to say, okay, I'm going to do it for 2 years, I don't feel like I'm just leaving my whole life here and then going there and never coming back. So, I think that I'd still like to do that.
Is there a reason why you haven't done that yet?
Well, as far as Corganic and Organic 3, we're still struggling to make it a business that's viable, and it's like any business you start up. It's just takes a while. We put all of our resources back into the business to help it grow, and there's all sorts of challenges in this business, and we're new at it, so we're learning as we go. But I think hopefully in a year or so we'll be on solid ground, and once that is the case, I think I can help run it from anywhere in the world, actually.
Yeah, because it's online. It's great.
Right. Exactly. That's why I haven't done it yet.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to see what you had to say. I want to thank you for sharing all that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I sometimes get a little upset talking about it, but I made it through.
No, I almost started crying. I was tearing up. So, I can only imagine.
It's good now. I mean, I never thought I'd be a single parent, but Jack and I we're good pals, and he's very easy to raise, and he's healthy. He's a good eater and loves life, and that makes things so much easier on me.
I always love keeping up with you on Facebook to see what you guys are up to. And that's the one thing that we can be grateful for, is that he's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about this whole thing with Corganic and the cod liver oil scandal and the fermented cod liver oil and all this stuff going on. And I really wanted to have you, Archie, on this because, there's a lot of talk out there that you did this, that this was you, that you you
And I'm
caused
the
this big
instigator of
controversy.
this whole thing.
Yeah, that you caused a big controversy.
I don't know.
And
I don't really look at it that way. I just, from my perspective, and I've never. The whole intent of this is not to attack anybody or denigrate anybody. What happened is we used to sell fermented cod liver oil. I don't know if you knew that or not.
yeah, no, I do.
And we were just getting an awful lot of calls because our client base is the GAPS children and people with very sensitive systems. In fact, that's how we ended up with Gut Pro which is our probiotic, is that we were just not satisfied with the probiotics that were out there. There were always some kind of ingredients in there or certain strains that were in there that were causing issues with these very, very sensitive children. And so we reformulated our own, working with several labs, and Dan Dan Corrigan is the one that headed all that up, to develop our own. So we developed the Gut Pro with no fillers whatsoever. There's no strains cultured on soy or dairy, and certain strains were taken out that were found to cause kids to have reactions. And so it's been a great product. But when we started selling the fermented cod liver oil, we started getting all these calls that, my kid's reacting to this. He's having diarrhea. He's having cramps. All sorts of issues were going on. And so we just immediately stopped. We just said, maybe this just isn't right for our customer.
You stopped selling it?
We stopped selling it, yeah.
You stopped selling it for everyone. Like, how long was this going on that you had calls and customer?
Oh, we probably sold it for about 8 months.
Okay.
And we were just getting too many calls.
Okay.
But again, we just figured because we're dealing with the sensitive of the sensitive.
Right.
That is why they're reacting to it. It's just a little too harsh for them.
Okay.
And so in the beginning of 2000...
And what did you think? What did you well, I guess you'd had other probiotics that they reacted to, which other people don't. So it wasn't anything
so I
wrong
just
with
figured,
it.
there's fermented foods that these kids react to because
Sure.
of the histamines or whatever's in there. So I just assumed, this is something in there they're reacting to. It's not a huge deal. It's just not right for our clients.
Okay.
And so in 2012, I thought, maybe there's something else out there that we can sell to these kids. Maybe there's a lightly fermented cod liver oil or a fresh cod liver oil, something out there that had the natural nutrients but wasn't harsh.
And
so,
what you mean by that is there's most of the cod liver oils on the market have synthetic,
highly processed.
Yeah.
Highly processed.
And they have synthetic vitamins in them, right?
Well, you have synthetics.
Yeah.
Or in a few cases, they don't add anything into it, and you're just getting very low vitamins.
Right.
So, we didn't think that was going to be very helpful to our clients either, that taking a highly processed oil or synthetic vitamins, again, hard to absorb and digest, and they already have huge absorption problems.
Right.
So, I don't know if I had a lot of hope of finding something, but every time I Googled, I would come across this ratfish oil, which did not sound appetizing whatsoever. But I'd go into different searches and that name would keep popping up. I said, maybe I just need to look into these guys. And so I read their website, and it sounded very intriguing what he was talking about as far as what was contained in the oil, certain lipids, and it had A and D in it, and you didn't need a lot. I thought, geez, that would be great. I wonder how it tastes. Because they went into this whole process of, it's an ancient Viking extraction process. And
that's what they were saying, the people that produced it?
Yes, this is what it was saying on their website. And that it was, it had vitamin E in it, so it was fairly stable. Didn't necessarily require refrigeration.
What do you mean by that? Why is that important?
Well, because most fish oils are going to contain a lot of polyunsaturated fats in the form of omega-3s, or just the omega fats are all what they call PUFAs. And so they react to oxygen very easily. They are very reactive, and they start to break down quickly. But if you have an antioxidant in the oil,
Mm.
it'll prevent this oxidation. So shark oil, ratfish oil have a sufficient amount of vitamin E to act as an antioxidant,
Does cod liver oil have that?
and very little, which
Okay.
is why, in
Okay.
fact, to go forward with this, I contacted Rosita, and I figured, well, they're in Norway. I've got to write him an email and translate it into Norwegian so he'll understand what I'm talking about. Because it was saying they're on this little island out in the middle of nowhere in northern Norway. So I'm just figuring, I'm just thinking this guy's got some archaic computer he's working on. And so I had it Google translated, sent it to him, and I said, this is our clientele. We work with a lot of these kids that have autism. And so Ben Svensson, who is one of the main people over there at Rosita, he wrote back and said, we speak English, we write English. Said, you don't have to go through all that trouble anymore. And I said, well, that's great. And he said, we would love to help you with these kids. And they really had the same philosophy as, these kids are suffering, they're in a dark place, and we want to help. And so we just had an instant connection right there. And so he sent me some bottles, and I tasted it, and you could barely taste the fishiness, but it's there. It's just slight. And since you only needed drops, I thought this is great. This is perfect. Mm. And so we started selling it. And it's not an easy sell because, again, that whole name ratfish turns a lot of people off. But the fact that it's not really a well-known oil, and the price, because it was all completely handcrafted. See, ratfish are a bycatch. They swim so deep, and they only come up at certain times of the year. And a bycatch is when fishermen are fishing for a certain fish, and they accidentally get this on their line, and they pull it in. But all the fishermen in that area know, hey, if you get a ratfish, send it over to these guys. They want the liver. And so that's how they pretty much got their ratfish livers. But so it was horribly expensive. Even though you're only taking drops, it's still price prohibitive for a lot of people, especially if they had a lot of kids. So I had more discussions. Now, the other partner of Rosita, his name is Dr. Pyrrhus Nicola. He's Greek. He lives actually born and raised in the UK. PhD, extremely smart guy. So I was having conversations with him about what can we do as far as maybe creating a cod liver oil, because that's what people over here are used to, and it might be at a better price point. He says, well, we can do the same extraction process, which is all natural. It won't use any heat or chemicals. And really what that extraction process is, it can only be done with fresh caught fish, because the ocean waters are so very cold there and deep. And so you've got this pressure difference between the surface and a temperature difference between the ocean and the surface. If they get the livers out quickly, just that change in temperature and that change in pressure exudes the oil without having to do anything else. But it can only be done
because of where the fish are?
Because of where they're coming from, the depths and the temperatures.
Wow.
It's almost like using heat and pressure in reverse. So you're taking the pressure and the temperature away, and so if you bring it up to room temperature, it just exudes the oil.
Interesting. I never understood that before until you just explained it.
Yeah,
and I still don't quite understand it, but I understand it better than when I try to read about it on your website.
But this was observed by the ancient Vikings way back when, and just kind of been handed down to through generations. So this is what they're doing. He said we can use that same process on cod livers. He says, but the biggest hurdle is there's no antioxidants in cod liver oil.
And the problem is it'll oxidize or go rancid.
That's right.
How fast does it go? How fast does it? Why are they concerned about that? Just from like literally from
within hours, you'll start to notice a change in taste, and then within probably 24 hours, you'll see a cloudiness to the oil, and yeah, it goes quickly. So everything that they do and everything that they would have to set up would have to take not only the oxygen portion of this out, but any of the other rancid factors. So heat, light, moisture, the fact that it has no antioxidants, all these things had to be dealt with. Even reactive metals. So they don't let metal touch the livers or the oil. They'll use ceramic knives to cut up the fish, because metals can help speed up the oxidation process.
Really?
So things like light, metal, moisture, they aren't actual rancid causing factors, but they can speed it up.
Okay, accelerate, right.
Accelerate the oxidation. So these were a lot of challenges. And so what they did is they figured out a way of getting this done, but within 48 hours. And what they had to do is obviously do their own fishing. Mm-hmm. So they do their own fishing. They get these fish. They get the extraction process going immediately. And then they put it in probably these, I think they're like these large bladders that are oxygen free, and get it over to the bottling facility. Now the lights and temperature in the bottling facility are kept low. The bottles are nitrogen flushed, and so they're capped with no oxygen in them. And again, nothing touches metal, no moisture. And so the bottles are kept small so that people can use them up before they ever start going rancid. But the key is and Dr. Nicola is the one that developed the antioxidant. It's just a little bit of vitamin E and rosemary herb, a tiny drop added to each bottle. But it took him 2 years to get that balance right. 2 years, because if you put too much in, it acts as a pro-oxidant, which is, again, just doing the opposite of what you want it to do. And too little, it's not going to do what you want it to do. It's going to start oxidizing. So once you got that balance right, then they came out with it. And that was September of last year that we actually introduced the product to the market.
So is that why it took so long? Because I remember you guys were talking about it back in 2012, right. And I thought it was just all because you couldn't get it imported, custom laws and things like that.
No, that hasn't been an issue. It's just a matter of making sure the product was where we wanted it to be.
Okay.
You don't want to come out of the gate with a product that's going to oxidize very quickly and people are going to be turned off by it. Because we're selling this as a fresh product. It's got to be fresh. So that was really the biggest hurdle, was the antioxidants. And so we keep it refrigerated. That's the other portion of this thing. But yeah, it's been really, really good reviews since we've had it out there. I think in the very beginning, the rosemary that I was using was a little bit too strong and people could taste it. And so he went to a different rosemary producer, and it's been very mellow ever since. So yeah, it's been really, really good. I guess maybe you could tell me, you take it, how you like it.
My kids take it too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I give it to Jack. He doesn't bat an eye.
They don't mind, and my daughter wouldn't take the other brands. So
anyway, I guess the long story short, as far as the autism community and people with high sensitivities, IBS and Crohn's and colitis and that, it's a very good product for them. And we're very happy that it's now a part of what we're selling with the Gut Pro and our other foods.
And I'm guessing you're not getting all those customer calls now.
Well, we're not, no. Yeah. I mean, there's some people that just have an aversion to fish, and they'll call and say, I can't take the taste of it. Well, not much we can do to help you there, because if you don't like fish, we can't change. We're not going to add flavors, and we don't add flavors for a reason. We want people to know
that it's fresh.
It's fresh, and when it's not fresh. If you happen to get a bottle where the seal is broken, or something happened, we want to replace the bottle for you.
I think, Archie, that's one of the reasons why I was so curious about all this back in 2012 when you first let us taste it. Because I think you weren't selling it yet, but you had some in the early bottles or whatever.
That's right.
And we got to taste it at the conference in 2012. And that was when you put the pamphlet out. We're going to talk about that next. But when I tasted it, I was like, it doesn't taste fishy at all. And it did taste really fresh. And so yeah, I was really intrigued. All right, let's talk about the pamphlet. I joked with you when this happened because you wrote this little pamphlet about the history of cod liver oil, and at the time I said this is like Martin Luther with the Protestant Reformation, putting the 95 Theses out, and because it wasn't received well. You actually put it in every single... Didn't you put it in all the bags for the conference attendees?
Yeah, all the registration bags received one. And yeah, I spent a lot of time... Because, when I went into this whole venture, I wanted to know more about the history of cod liver oil, which to give me some background on what we were dealing with. And so I just did a lot of... And I love history. So I just did a lot of reading about...
Because when you started getting into, too, you were thinking about going with Rosita. You wanted to learn about it, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's amazing that they can even fish sometimes in those fjords. They're so wickedly cold and wild. In fact, Rosita's contacted us a few times and said we can't go fishing today. It's just too rough. But I can't imagine what it was like back in, 1500s, 1600s, going out there fishing, or even the Vikings back in, the 1100s, going out there and fishing in those boats that they crafted, and they must have capsized a lot because it's just so dangerous. But yeah, I wanted to know more about how they decided to come out with taking oil out of a fish's liver and consuming it. I mean, that seems bizarre to me. So yeah, it was an eye-opener for me. So I wrote down a quick little booklet, like this booklet here, of what the history was, because cod liver oil was not always a consumable. It was for the Vikings. They consumed it fresh because it was available to them fresh.
Like you said, they were in the really cold waters.
Well, yeah, they would catch it. And
again, if you study the work of Weston Price, everybody ate different foods around the world based on what they had access to.
That's right.
Yeah.
But they also used cod liver oil a lot for lantern fuel during the Industrial Revolution, especially. In fact, the name Lisi, which is Norwegian for light, because the oil was used for lanterns.
That's the name for cod liver oil?
Correct.
Lisi.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And not that I'm pronouncing it right, but that's...
Yeah, we probably just butchered it.
I butchered all those names. I know. Ben tells me some names. I'm like, what? I couldn't pronounce that if you paid me. But yeah, a lot of the oil back then was used for things like lantern fuel, tanning hides, and so it wasn't until they discovered that it had some medicinal purposes that they actually started thinking about, hey, maybe we should prepare this oil a little bit better than we're doing for the industrial oil. And that's when they started to render it, render
so
it.
Go back. When they were doing the industrial oil, how were they doing it?
They would just put it in barrels, because the fishermen would come in and they would go back to their dwelling and they'd have all these barrels, and they'd put the fish roe in one barrel and they'd put the livers in another barrel. And then when they filled up, they would just cap the barrel. And at the end of the season, they would take those barrels back to their village. And as it starts to warm up, like June, July.
Because we're talking about really cold. So they stayed cold in the barrels.
They stayed cold in the barrels.
And dark.
But as you start getting towards April, May, June, things are starting to warm up.
And they didn't have
as
refrigeration.
They warm up,
right.
These livers would start to putrefy and disintegrate.
Okay.
And when they did that, the oil would just rise to the top, and they would just scoop that oil out and sell it as, again, lantern fuel or whatever they were
So
using.
when they
So nobody really cared if it was rancid or not because they weren't consuming it.
they weren't
It was,
consuming it.
it was just used for industry.
Did
Um,
anybody consume it?
yes, they did. But what was happening is the old fishermen would just rub it on their skin or their joints because it really relieved their sore muscles and sore joints. And so the infirmaries and the apothecaries um, in not only Norway but even throughout Europe were using it as sort of a topical. And it was not until about the late 1700s that one of the practitioners said, "Here, for a lady with rheumatism, take this, put it on your skin, and while you're at it, why don't you take some internally?" And within 2 weeks, she was cured. I mean, cured. And so this sort of sparked a whole rage of let's get some cod liver oil. And so from like late 1700s to about middle 1800s, there was just a growing demand for this cod liver oil because it was curing gout, it was curing rickets or preventing rickets, and just infections, all sorts of things that were going on. It was curing. So the medical profession, it became a medicinal, basically.
But it
And
wasn't really medicinal. You're saying it wasn't really a medicinal prior to that, other
well,
than the guys rubbing it on the.
the interesting thing about it is when they um, let the livers putrefy. If they get the oil in the first couple weeks, it was still somewhat pale.
Mm,
They would call this pale medicinal oil.
mm,
And after that, it would start getting a little bit more brown.
mm-hmm.
And that was sort of just called a light brown oil. And then after a while, what was left, they would just throw the livers in a cauldron and boil it and get whatever they could out of it. And that was the dark brown oil. So the pale oil, as you can imagine, in the first 2 weeks, it just wasn't a lot of quantity, and so the demand was so high that they couldn't possibly fill the demand. So they started using the light brown oils
Mm.
medicinally, with some mixed results.
And were they taking that as
Oh
opposed?
yeah, they were
Yeah,
taking that, and it was working.
right.
So the light brown oils were doing the thing, but they were also causing a lot of issues at the same
Because of the
time.
rancidity. Yeah,
So the practitioners at the time were wondering, are we doing as much damage as we are good?
right.
So that was sort of the quandary. So in 1850, this Peter Mahler came out with this steam rendering. So they would take fresh livers, steam render them, get the oil out, and bottle. This would be the oil from about late 1800s because it took him almost 40 years to displace the brown oils because they were all making money on the brown oil, selling it medicinally.
Mm.
Then you'd have a lot of fraudulent oils out there too. There are people that take the brown oil and they would bleach it, or they would use other fish liver oils. They even use seal oil or mix it with some vegetable oils and sell that as cod liver oil. And so after a while, you started getting some ads that were saying true cod liver oil. That's pure cod liver oil or Norwegian cod liver oil. And, just trying to educate people that hey, there's all this fraudulent stuff, but here's the real deal. And so once that was bottled and shipped around, the biggest issue that they have, even though they're selling it, bottling it fresh from fresh livers, there's no antioxidants.
Mm.
And so from late 1800s till about the 1960s, this was the oil that everybody used.
And
Price would have used that oil.
and that I read about that.
And even the people that discovered, vitamin A and vitamin D,
Mm-hmm.
used cod liver oil for their discoveries. So the vitamin content was there. It wasn't really damaged that much from the steam rendering. But there was no way to keep it fresh. There was no refrigeration. There was no knowledge of antioxidants. And they couldn't obviously nitrogen flush their bottles back then. There was just things that we can do today that they couldn't do back then. So that when you received your bottle, it was probably already half rancid, and just the fact that nobody had refrigeration, it would go horribly rancid. And that's what our parents and grandparents who were forced to take it on a daily basis remember this horrible, horrible oil because it was horribly rancid. So what Rosita is doing is actually the first and only fresh cod liver oil that is kept fresh from start to consumption. And so, yeah, they've done something that nobody else has done and be able to ship this globally and still have it fresh.
Yeah, because when you guys ship it, it comes with the dry ice and everything.
Right.
And then you keep
with the cold pack. We don't even have to because there's no oxygen in it to oxidize. The bottle has no oxygen, so you can ship it without a cold pack.
Unless you open it.
Unless you open it.
And then when you open it, it
goes you better have it in your refrigerator. Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, we treat it like it's like a fresh fish. I mean, it's you're not going to leave fresh fish sitting on a counter. It's just going to start going bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's sort of the history part of it. And so what I did is I took this history.
Now, why did you, what was going through your mind that you wanted to get this information out there to all of
Well, I thought it would be nice for people to understand where cod liver oil, how it's not always been used as a medicinal, that it's had other functions, that it's had sort of a varied past. It's been vilified, it's been hailed, it's been ups and downs for cod liver oil, and just the how it went from being an industrial oil to this medicinal to what we have today, which is this horribly processed product. So I thought that it was interesting to me, and I thought, hey, maybe it'd be interesting to other people, so we put it in this little pamphlet.
What do you say to people that are saying that you did this to attack David Wetzel and Green Pasture?
Well, it's interesting because when we distributed it, like you said, it was in every bag. Only 2 people came up to us at that conference and said, I think this booklet is really bashing Green Pastures. 2 out of 1,200-1,300 people that got it in their bag. And one of them that came up to us worked at his table, and we just said, that's not the intent. It never says Green Pastures in there. It never says fermented cod liver oil in there or anything. It's just the history. But the person that found it the most denigrating was Sally, and so she emailed me and said, you got to stop this booklet. It's bashing Green Pastures. I said, what do you mean? That wasn't the intent. It's just the.
She said this after the conference, after you gave it.
After the conference, yeah. I said, but I kept thinking, well, why is she contacting me? Why isn't David Wetzel contacting me? Is she the unofficial spokesperson for Green Pastures? But I just replied and I said, I don't understand where this is denigrating anybody. It's just the history. And so I wrote back and I said, I'll tell you what. If there's something wrong, if I have my facts incorrect, send me the references. I'll fix the booklet. I'll amend it. I'll offer an apology, whatever you want me to do. But I'm not going to change history for the sake of changing history. It is what it is. But if you can show me where I'm wrong and give me those references, I'll be more than happy to change it. And she never did. So I never changed it. It's still on our website. It's you can look up on ebclo.com and you'll see the history. So I didn't change it because there was nothing to change, and I didn't understand it. I just didn't understand what was there that was bashing Green Pastures until about 8-9 months ago. I came across this article that was on Weston A. Price's site. I think it's still there. It's called Cod Liver Oil Manufacturer Update by David Wetzel, and he was describing the process that he used, that he emulated to make Green Pastures Floco, and it was the same reference that I use in the booklet about how they putrefy the livers, and let the oil come to the top. And I thought, well, no wonder he thinks that this is bashing him because he's using the exact same references.
In other words,
what I couldn't understand is how did he take this process that was putrefaction and turn it into fermentation?
Mm.
But, at that point, I just said, that's fine. I don't need to go into it any further. If anybody wants to see the booklet, it's on the evclo.com, but it's nothing I need to pursue. But anyway, Sally thinks that was bashing and still sort of talks about that as bashing. And, my whole thought on it, if he is using the putrefaction process, I would be highly concerned about the oil. But I would think a lot more people would be sick. So I don't think that that's exactly what's going on. So I couldn't really tell you what they're doing, but if it was that brown oil from the Industrial Revolution, that would have been some pretty nasty stuff. So I don't know. I sort of just let it go. And I'm sure it hurt our sales when she starts telling people that we're bashing the competition. And that wasn't really our intent. Never has been. I've met David Wetzel a few times. I know his daughter was running around one conference selling 50-50 raffle tickets, and she seemed like a real nice kid. And, they seem like real nice people. And I got to salute them for trying to come out with a product that is all natural and doesn't have all these synthetics or horribly over-processed. But I'm not sure at least for our clients, it wasn't the right process. And maybe it sounds like it works well for some other people, and for some other people that have had issues, it's hasn't been a good product for them. I think when Kayla came out with her report, I was probably just as shocked as everybody else is what some of the results were.
So you weren't convinced that it was rancid, or were you? Did you think there's something wrong with this stuff? Or were you just like thinking maybe it was, or like what was after you did all that research?
Well,
I'm not asking you this. The
points I brought up to Sally. Yeah. I said, if our clients are reacting to this thing, maybe it's not good for even healthy people. But it wasn't really something that I made a really big issue out of, because then it would have started probably crossing some lines where I was. And really, it's not a matter of. Here we are, we're saying that these over-processed oils, we're bashing that process, correct? Yeah. We're saying, hey, you're over-processing this, you're putting synthetics, you're destroying the natural vitamin A and D. But if you come to the fermented cod liver oil, you really can't separate the process from the company, because there's only one company doing it. But if we could focus on just the process,
yeah, that's a good point.
Not the company, and say, okay, I have some questions about this process, then we can take the personality out of it and just focus on the science of it. I think that would be an appropriate thing for everybody to do at this point.
I think, wow, I haven't heard anybody say that before, but I love that. So much of this is emotional, and people are talking about the community, and people are talking about attacks and this, that, and the other. And it's all emotional, and the reality is, none of that matters. I understand we care about our friends, and we care about each other, and we're very caring people in this community. But at the end of the day, is the product and the process good or bad? Is it producing more health or less? And like you said about, back in Dr. Price's day, it was rancid. He said, Dr. Price said, you have to be very careful, only use a little bit, because they were so rancid. So wouldn't we want, this is just my opinion, but as a community, if somebody did the research that you did, and it doesn't matter, again, who the personalities are, just an individual does a bunch of research, finds out all the stuff about the true history of cod liver oil, and there's a company now that's willing to go out and fish this stuff and do it in a way that, with the antioxidant and everything, that could make it so that it could be really that it could work. And,
Right.
and I didn't bring this up, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned, for autistic kids, cod liver oil is so important.
Of course, because they have such absorption problems to begin with.
And the
And
vitamin
that was our initial thinking.
Yeah.
You know, how are we going to help these kids? And it's such a vital nutrients, and you know they're not getting their vitamins, they're not getting their minerals, and this is key. And
Back in 2007, there was a doctor named Mary Megson who works with autistic kids. She's from the South, and she came to the conference. And I didn't get to see her, but I heard the lecture, and it was all about autism and vitamin A, and how much vitamin A just profoundly impacts these kids. And she actually was talking, it was so interesting, because she was talking about how the cones and the rods or whatever in the eyes, and that's why when a child is on the spectrum, you know, you have these kids that look, they think they're not looking at you, they're looking over
yeah,
there.
right.
And it's because that's how they're messed up, because they don't have enough vitamin A.
That's
why they have to look like that. And that's why they have such great results with cod liver oil. So it's just like, oh my God, you guys figured out how to do this cod liver oil that is not rancid, that is just sounds like they're doing everything right. You're not doing it, they're doing it. These guys are experts, but you're bringing that over. Wouldn't we as a community, again, personalities aside, relationships aside, you know, it's painful to have to throw a business away. And I know this from personal experience because I just went through this. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars personally, which
Sorry to that.
you know,
Yeah.
That's not fun for anybody. To
No,
not know how you're
I mean-
going to pay your bills, and you got to pay support the kids. And the reason I bring this up is because, you know what? I'm glad that it happened, because that business was not a sustainable business, and it would have caused me much more problems if it had crashed later. So in the end of the day, we got to do what's right. We got to do what is healthy for people. We got to do what is going to bring health, not destroy health. So if that's what it's really about, then why are we having conversations about who's upset or friendships or relationships? Yeah, I get it. And I lost a lot of relationships when my business crashed. But it was for the best. So, you know, if we have to tear everything down and restart and do it over, but do it right, don't we want that?
I would want, just from being within the Weston A. Price Foundation, I would want to bring people together on this, and I just see so much division, and it's not healthy for anybody, because we're all in this together. I have tremendous respect for what Sally's accomplished with the foundation. My dealings with her over the cod liver oil have been not so fruitful. But you know, there's lots of other organizations and lots of other places for us to go. I think our initial goal was, let's work with the foundation, incubate EVCLO, get it on its feet, and that hasn't worked out. You know, she's never really taken us under her wing, and we've always felt like, you know, she's trying to push us away. But you know, she's really a big advocate for the fermented cod liver oil, and I think the only thing that I've really been disappointed with her is this whole thing that we've been bashing Green Pasture, or trying to put them out of business or something, and that is horribly wrong and kind of hurtful that she would go that route, because we've never been that way. We're very grateful for all that she's done. We're grateful for what Dave has done, because without the fermented cod liver oil, we probably never would have come up with EVCLO. I wouldn't want to see him go out of business. If there's something wrong with his oil, I'd want to see him fix it and then move forward. But if people are just going to say it's great the way it is and there's no issues, then nothing will change. If more people step up and say, I've had a reaction or it's done something to my heart, I would think that people would just take a step back and say, listen, maybe there's something in our process or maybe there's something going on that is allowing rancidity to get in. And we just need to take a look at it, look at our processes. And I think it would be helpful if he was a little bit more transparent on what he's doing. But I'm not out to harm anybody. If anything, we're just trying to help these kids on the spectrum. That's been our focus from day one. And certainly if people came back to us and started saying, oh, we're having a reaction to your cod liver oil, we would take a step back.
Yeah, I know.
We would analyze what we were doing.
Well, you did.
And say, listen, if it's bad enough, we'll pull the product and reevaluate everything that we're doing. But if you're just going to dig your heels in and say, hey, it's great, it's done well by me, and there's a few people that have had some issues, but no big deal, then nothing changes. So I agree with you. Take the personalities out of it. Just look at the product itself and the science behind it. I've never really understand how you can lacto-ferment livers and how that conveys any protection to a polyunsaturated fat. But if it's a theory that's working for them and they're fine with it, I guess I'm fine with it too. But
honestly, Archie, let's just be honest. You just said theory, and it is a theory. It's a theory.
Yeah,
if we're debating the science on this, then this is obviously something that hasn't been around very long. How long have people been daily consuming fermented cod liver oil? 9 years?
Right.
Maximum.
I think a bigger issue is the fact that if it's not Atlantic cod, but an Alaska pollock, that you're not going to get the same ratios of vitamins or the same levels of vitamins that you would in the Atlantic cod. The thing is, there's other fish, halibut and other fish that have vitamin A and vitamin D and omega fats, but they historically have never had the healing power of the Atlantic cod.
Why?
They don't know. There might be some unknown
based on your
fatty acid in there. There might be some correct ratio going on there. Might be the feeding grounds. They don't really know. All they know, even back then, because they didn't know anything about A and D and omega fats or any of these nutrients, all they knew is that this particular fish from this particular area produced these amazing, amazing results on health. And so that's what Rosita's philosophy is. Whether you come up with all these crazy vitamin numbers and fatty acid profiles, let's just go back to what worked. Let's get that same fish. Let's get it from the same areas and produce an oil that's never going to go rancid. I shouldn't say never, but it's kept fresh.
Right.
And so that's been their whole philosophy on this. And so far, it's working. I mean, it's very expensive for them to produce it. They're not making really any money on this, and we're not making much money on this. But that's, I guess that wasn't really our intent, was to make boatloads of money on this thing. It's more of, let's get this out there where these kids really, really need it.
Yeah.
And I say kids, I mean adults, teens, everybody needs it. And that's really been our focus on this. So we're not, by any stretch of the imagination, making tons. In fact, Rosita's come to us a couple times and said, we got these fishermen out there, and if we don't keep them busy, we're going to lose them, and I don't know if we can keep doing production on this. And
you guys are the sole distributor in the United States.
In the U.S. we are, yeah.
And the U.S. is the biggest. It's a huge market, and you're the one that went to them and said, we need this here. So they said.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with them as far as I sort of prompted them to go into this whole thing, so I feel very responsible for it all. But sales are starting to increase. And and I think it'll make it. Hopefully it will. They want to do capsules. They're working with a capsulator that will take the actual collagen from the codfish that they're catching and turn it into capsules. So another part of the fish will be used to make the capsules. And so we're excited about that because there are people that just don't like the taste of fish, and some of these kids on the spectrum have a lot of taste sensitivities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it could be very good for them, and we're going to keep the caps smaller so that they can swallow them. We're hoping that comes out in November, December. We'll see how that plays out, but yeah, it's one of these things that we're just hoping continues to grow. And my whole thing down the road is I want to make this affordable for people that can't afford it. We get calls from moms that say, I've got 4 kids, I can't afford your oil. Sometimes I end up shipping a couple of bottles on the slide. Just here, I don't want you suffering. I don't want you to be
without. Does Dan know you do that?
But it's not a profitable thing to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it's
Archie
just
did.
That I feel for them, and I want the help so badly. And but we need to figure out a way that everybody can have access to this, and without us going under. But I want to make it affordable for people, and that's a fine line that we're going to have to walk.
So Archie, we just have a couple more minutes, and I got a big question to ask you, and it's I don't know why I ended up that I have to ask you this at the very end, but I want to talk to you about the pulmonary embolism. The D that killed D. Because that's another rumor that I've heard is, he thinks this cod liver oil killed his wife, and that's why he's doing this. Did you think when she died that it had anything to do with fermented cod liver oil?
No. It wasn't, I think, till about a year ago. I was just chatting with one of the chapter leaders out west, and I mentioned how Dee passed away, and she said, "What's going on?" It's just like that's like the third person I've heard of in this Weston A Price community that has either died or had a blood clot that they barely survived, and that just sort of these bells went off. I go, what's going on? And so this whole thing with all this pulmonary stuff going on with Dr. Ron, and it sort of made me wonder, is there the rancidity of that oil, because she was taking fermented cod oil and the butter oil religiously during her pregnancy. So it makes me wonder, but what other factors were involved? I mean, she was 38 years old. It was her first child. She had issues with some IBS. Did it play a role? Who knows? And at this point, does it matter, because it's never going to bring her back. She's gone. If there's some issues with that and blood clots and pulmonary embolisms, I would hope that it would be one of the things that both the foundation and Green Pastures would take a really hard look at and say, is there some issues with this? But it's not something that I would ever point a finger at somebody and say, this caused her to die. I don't believe that.
Well, not only that, but you never even put those pieces together.
No, and I take stuff that I remember when they first came out with that nitrate-free bacon, and I was taking that and didn't realize it had all these nitrates from the celery juice powder. So I was eating bacon, and this is like only months after Dee passed away. Well, there was no regulation on how much they could put in there, because this was like a brand new thing they were doing. I was getting all of these symptoms from too many nitrates, which is what they call blue baby syndrome or cyanosis. I couldn't get any oxygen into my cells, and I couldn't breathe. And so I go to the hospital. They don't know what the hell's wrong with me. They end up doing all these tests, And they said, well, we could put a stent in. And he goes, I don't see a lot of blockage here. And he says, I see a kink. I said, you know what? I don't want to leave my kid an orphan. Just put the damn stent in there and get me the hell out of here. And so they did. And the symptoms came back like 2 or 3 months later because wasn't going to stop eating bacon. That's when I figured out there was something with the bacon. But, we try these things. I remember Natasha tried some herbs that came from South Africa and went into convulsions and almost died.
Wow.
So, we go into these things hoping that, this is a good path to go down. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we injure ourselves. But I never look back and say, geez, that person or that product, I don't think that way.
Well, it would, yeah. I have nothing more to say to that. I agree with you.
Okay.
We're all human. We're all human.
Yeah, we're all on this journey. We're all trying to figure it out. And, if we hit upon something that's good and we can share that with other people, and I really think the EVCLO has been a great product. And it's unfortunate it's got mixed up into this controversy and that it's had a hard time getting off the ground. But, hopefully this controversy will start to dissipate. And, I'm really sad and sorry to see all this division that's going on. It's sort of torn the foundation apart. And I don't think it needed to be that way. I just think that had Sally taken maybe a different approach, but she's an emotional person too. Science decided just a lot of people base their decisions on emotion, let's face it. And but eventually I would hope the science would come to the forefront and people would be a little bit more discerning and calm about the directions that we're heading in with all this. Because, the food movement isn't that big to begin with. I mean, we need all the players we can, and we need to be all on the same side. And whether paleo, even vegetarians, they're probably anti-GMO and, factory farming. Let's at least work together on those issues together, and instead of saying, you're not eating right, you're not my buddy, that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think Sally could do a lot more to bring people together, and I'm just really sorry to see the way things have gone.
Me too. And, I think if she could have, then we would still all be part of Weston Price. But, after what happened to Ron, there was really, if you watch the other video that I made with Dr. Ron, you can hear his story. And, after what happened to him, I don't see any other choice for him. If it were me, if I were in his shoes, there was nothing else he could do. I mean, he almost died. He had 3 to 6 months to live.
Jeez.
What are you going to do? You going to say, oh yeah, I'll still support this product?
Yeah.
No, you can't. You can't.
Well, that's the decision we made. All these kids were having reactions. Are we going to continue to sell and support it? We can't. We just can't.
And if the organization doesn't allow dissent, doesn't allow interrogation, doesn't allow being inquisitive and asking questions and having conversation and dialogue, to me, that's not a healthy organization.
Yeah.
It's
not improving their product either.
Right.
And we take as much feedback as we can because we want to keep improving our product. And but you're right. If it's that dictatorial, nothing's going to change, and I think it's to the detriment of everybody.
Yeah. So we have the new organization, which Dr. Ron did not think of. People keep saying this whole thing happened because people are trying to divide the community. No, nobody was trying to divide the community. We were all trying to stay together. But when this happened to Dr. Ron, and then he got kicked out, and then Kayla got kicked out, it was like,
I was shocked about that.
Yeah, and then Dr. Ron said, well, okay, I guess we're going to start a new foundation. And I just gotta say, I'm really grateful for the way everybody's been responding to this. We could have just gotten depressed and not done anything, and but I just really admire you, Archie. I admire Dan and Karen for what you're doing with Corganic. I think you guys are amazing. I mean, I'm very, very, I know a lot about probiotics because I cured myself with probiotics in my 20s. I had arthritis and, chronic fatigue syndrome and all these issues.
Yeah.
And I know that most probiotics don't really work. I'll say that if anybody asks me, they don't really work. You guys did make a probiotic that worked. I do still recommend BioCult, but which I think, you guys sold it before, but the reason you came up with the other one was because for your more sensitive customers, you needed something that was, different. And that never caused a controversy in the organization. You guys were always selling Gut Pro. You had a choice. You could do Gut Pro or you could do, and we know that different probiotics work differently, different strains for different people. And, it's good to have variety. It's good to have different products instead of all just one. So, I think that what you're doing is admirable. And, there are so many people who come out of the Weston Price Foundation who are really, in my mind, heroes. And you're one of them. All three of you guys are heroes in my mind. The amigos, the three amigos, as Sally calls them, Dr. Ron and Kayla and David Gumpert, also heroes, because it's hard to look. The people who are attacking the three amigos, it's much easier to be where you are, attacking us, because I consider myself an amigo now. It's much easier to be attacking us and saying you're trying to destroy the community. It's hard to be saying something that's different, that's challenging the status quo.
Right.
It's hard to put yourself
and I agree. I think that with the Kayla and Dr. Ron and David Gumpert, it takes a lot of guts to do what they did. And they have high ethics. Randy Hartnell is another one I think that has very high ethics. It would be easy to sell pollock oil as cod liver oil and make a ton of money. We could do that, but it's not ethical. And it's not doing what we want it to do for these kids on the spectrum. Yeah. We're looking for the highest quality, not the lowest.
Yeah.
And so I give him a lot of credit. 30 years in the industry, people should take note of what he's saying. And even with Dr. Ron and Kayla, they're very, very smart people. Yeah. People should listen to what they have to say.
At least listen, yeah.
Just not discard it. Yeah. But again, it just goes back to, instead of having this hard line, open up and let's discuss some of these things. And if there's issues, let's fix them. Doesn't mean you have to just throw it all out. Just if there's things that need to be fixed, fix them. And
I think if Dave Wetzel, like you said, if he pulled back and said, wow, I'm sorry, I've listened to you now, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to change what I'm doing. And if Sally had said, or could still say, like, I'm sorry, and I'm going to take responsibility, people would forgive them. Human beings are fallible, but we do forgive.
That's right. But I sort of had an inkling with my dealings with her back in 2012 over this booklet that she was going to dig in and things would turn out the way they have, just the way she was dialoguing with me. And I sort of, like, on the sidelines thought, oh, God, this isn't going to go well. And it didn't. And,
you're so funny.
But, I said my piece back then to her about my concerns about, if he's using in this putrefaction process, then, you might have a dangerous oil on your hands. So I said my piece and I was done with it. I don't need to say anything more. If she wants to listen to it and David wants to listen to it at Green Pastures, and if they don't, well then, they're going to get more of the same, and eventually enough people will have issues that will come out, and they have.
You know what I think is really cool? The Weston Price Foundation and now this new, what is it? They just changed the name. I didn't even tell you this. They just changed the name. It's now,
Again?
yeah. It's the PPP. So PPPF, which is Paleo Primal Price Foundation. And the reason they went with that is because they had issues with the trademark. So this is the new name. And what's really cool about it, what just came to my mind, because I'm listening to you talk about Dave Wetzel and Sally Fallon, all these people that are part of our extended community. And it just occurred to me, we are a tribe.
Oh, of course.
And not just us, but the paleo folks that have been shunned from our tribe, which was really unfortunate and made me really sad, and why I actually stopped. I left the Weston Price Foundation 3 years ago because of that, because of what happened to Rob Wolf and all the others. To me, it was I just didn't want to be associated. But, and it made me really sad to lose my tribe, and I think we do. It breaks our hearts to not be able to have this tribe. And that's what I'm excited about, the new organization.
Well, and that's the sad part about, Sally has done so much.
Yeah.
With the whole raw milk and the farm to consumer and all this activism. And I don't know why on this particular instance, she just has gone down this path, and maybe she's gone down it too far and just doesn't feel like she can come back. But you're right. If she were to just take a step back, we're all fallible, and we all make mistakes, but it's not even a mistake. It's just a learning curve.
That's what I said when I posted about the failure of my business. I said on my blog, I said, why do we call them failures? Let's call them steps on the path to success,
There you go. But I just, this whole digging in and saying, there's nothing wrong with the product, and it's, it's not a good attitude. So I will support the new foundation, PP, whatever it is.
PPP.
PPP. Oh, great.
I know.
Not that we need another foundation, but
no, exactly. That's the thing. It's like we don't need another foundation, but we do. We do, because as Rob Wolf said, after he was attacked, back in, I guess it was 2012, he said, it's the baby, I don't know if you can hear that. He said, we need to build a bigger tent. And that's kind of, I felt this like global tribe, this tribe of people who want to make change in the world. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it. But with that said, I know I need to let you go, and I got to get the baby. Sure. So thank you so much, Archie.
Okay, thank you. And hope I didn't say anything too derogatory. And
you know what? That's, again, what we need to just say as fellow tribe members is we're going to step on each other's toes. We're going to make mistakes. I mean, I've said things. I wrote a whole post that was anti-paleo years ago. And then I went back and said, you know what, I'm sorry for that post. I thought that was wrong. We make mistakes, but we can come back from that.
Oh, I make lots of mistakes.
We all do. We're human.
Yeah. But, I think it's all of where is your heart at? Where are you headed? And I think that's the important part, that we're all working together. And right now we're fractured. And I hope that this new foundation I can get that same spirit that I felt when I first went to my first Weston A Price conference, and it just was so exciting, and all these people and this information. It was just, I thought, man, this is the greatest.
It's like Christmas morning. It's like going to the Weston Price conference. It's me. That's what I always said. It feels like Christmas morning. It's just so exciting and so much love and so much connection and people really caring about each other and caring about their health and caring about the farmers. It's great.
Yeah. And so we'll see.
All right.
But I appreciate the chat, and hopefully we've cleared some air and people understand where we're coming from.
Thanks, Archie.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.